I'd like to invite up Kal Mentak, Dr. Kal Mentak of the Vision Innovation Institute. I'd like to invite up Linda Horner, who is a partner with Uplifting Capital. And I would like to invite up my friend Peter Borish, who is a director with CIBC. I love it. And so with that, let's dive into the first question. Kal, because you started tying it in, you get to go first, and it's for all the panelists. It's what first inspired you to combine the profit side with the purpose side? We've talked about impact investing at previous Legacy Builders events, but I always love hearing individual stories and why it's important to them.
Yeah, and before I answer the question, I was so inspired by so many people here. I mean, the speakers were absolutely incredible. And I heard Greg, I met with Greg yesterday, and in his talk today, he talked about loving Africa. And then Bob talked about how we're all brothers and sisters. And in Africa, we have a saying, we say, what Africa really needs is love. A wise man told me once that if you love someone, teach them how to live and thrive without you. And that's what I think impact investing is all about. And I really helping build these two NGOs in addressing blindness, what I've learned is that there are some wonderful, wonderful people giving a lot of money to these causes, but at the end of the day, we're falling behind as far as blindness is concerned. And I'm sure it's the case in a lot of other causes, whether it's poverty. So it is a responsibility for all of us to think about novel ways to address challenges. And I think the best way to do that is to combine for-profit with nonprofits. And I was always intrigued by this Adam Smith's idea of the invisible hand. It's a self-regulating force of the economy that is driven by self-interest. And I think that has created so much wealth in the world for so many, but it has created so much problems as well. And I'd like to think that an economy driven by an invisible heart, where there's an intentional pursuit of positive impact alongside philanthropy, alongside profits, I think can change the way we think about the world. And it's really, from an investment perspective, I'm a professional investor, it's really thinking about impact, positive impact, as a third dimension of investment analysis, alongside risk and return. So value, as we see it, when we analyze an investment, adding value as another dimension, as a third dimension, I think it's one of the most powerful approaches that we can use today. And I work with a lot of absolutely brilliant founders in our portfolio companies. I mean, these kids are just, I call them kids because some of them are in their 20s, but they're absolutely brilliant, brilliant people. And we do this social experiment, and I ask them sometimes, I say, are you interested in philanthropy? And they always say, yes, of course we are interested. And I ask, how do you think you're going to be involved in philanthropy? And they all say the same thing. After I do my first exit, my first IPO, I will donate money, a lot of it. And that's great. But that's not the kind of mindset that we need in this world. We need these people. And I hope that the next Google or the next OpenAI is built with value as a third dimension.
That's beautiful. Linda.
So you asked what inspired me to come into this work. And I think thank you, by the way, for doing the definition, because I think sometimes people are not entirely clear what impact investing is. But for me, it was a combination of my passions and my skill set. Like I mentioned, I grew up in Uganda, where lots of my family and friends and neighbors made $1 a day. So I came from a world of poverty and then have kind of made it in the US. And I'm very much a capitalist, and I believe in the power of capital to bring change alongside philanthropy, alongside government, alongside other things that also have a role to play in causes that are very much still relevant that we've talked about today: conservation, whether it's healthcare, education, agriculture. There's definitely a role for a number of different types of capital to come to play, and I felt like impact investing was the perfect intersection of my passions, what was good for the world, and sort of my skill set. So that's how I came into this work. But I think I find it very fulfilling. Our firm is called Uplifting Capital. That is very intentional, because we believe that the sort of the nature of investing in the things that you care about, even if you're still getting a financial return, should feel uplifting. I think people think about that in a philanthropic way, but you can also do that when you're investing for financial returns.
Peter.
I should really yield the balance of my time back to the two of them, because they said it so eloquently. So for me, it starts really probably with, you're instilled, your parents, are they philanthropic, then comes to you. And then we were fortunate, we had some success at a young age, and we felt, okay, New York has been really good to us. We want to give back to New York, and everything has been riding on that. With, of course, you have to have sort of an underlying philosophy, and where we are today in the economic cycle, back where we started in the 80s. And to me, basically trickle-down economics is those at the bottom, when things go bad, get trickled on the fastest. And we need to be there, those that sort of want to look forward, understand economics, because as I said earlier, markets work, and utilize that combination to help those who are less fortunate. And that's why we focus primarily on New York City, and we've been very fortunate. And our prior executive director, for those of you who don't know too much about Robin Hood Foundation in New York City, was Wes Moore, who, as you now know, is a rising star in the Democratic Party and the governor of Maryland. He was the CEO for 4 years.
And there's someone else that also got their start with Robinhood that we talked about before, that is out on the West Coast now.
Oh, yes. Well, Daniel Laurie, who is the new mayor of San Francisco, thank you for bringing that up. Actually, his first job was working with us at Robinhood in its early days.
And so I think it's really beautiful looking at the long tail of seeing, from a people development perspective, Peter, what came out from seeds that you planted many years ago in terms of a individual development to people that they are now. But going back to some of the questions, really wanted to highlight that. But Linda, I'm going to throw this first one to you, or the second one, I guess. So it's a little bit cliche. We've talked about it before. But clarify for everyone in the audience, are you sacrificing financial return when you're investing in an impact project or impact funds?
Not necessarily. So I think this is a common misconception around sacrificing financial returns in impact investments. The reason why there is this misconception is because impact investing is a spectrum. So you can go into it with varying kind of financial goals and impact goals. And there are investors who will make a decision to concede some financial returns because they want to have a deeper impact. And you will hear people call that catalytic capital, because it goes in before, when it's still riskier, before sort of market rate capital comes in. But impact investing, in the way that we do it, is very much targeting market rate returns. And while this field has actually evolved, I think the term was coined about 2 decades ago. And since then, there's been opportunity to have a depth and a diversity of investment opportunities. So I think when it started, maybe you could get a clean tech company to invest in. But today, actually, a vast majority of impact investment opportunities are in mature private companies, in private equity opportunities, not just kind of these risky venture opportunities or only sort of special high-risk lending opportunities to small businesses. So the field has evolved. Is about $1 trillion estimated today in terms of the market size globally, and estimated to go to 4.5 trillion. And this is still sort of a misconception that investors have to overcome, because when they think about, my money makes money, and then I take that money and I give it. Like, why do I need to sort of bridge these two things? But then I think if you then realize that your money could make money while doing good in the world, it opens up an aperture for the much more impact that your money can make. So that's what I have to say about that.
Good answer. And Peter and Kal, I'm going to direct this next question to both of you. And it is, as you've worked on impact projects, as you're actively doing them, Kal, I know a little bit about what you're doing actually in Africa. Feel free to touch on that. Peter, touch specifically on your carbon markets that you're working on right now. How have collaborative partnerships contributed to the success of projects coming off the ground? And how do you view it as a way of de-risking?
So that's a one-word answer. Everything. Collaboration is everything. And you have to stick to your strengths. So mine is kind of like exchange building. So in the not-for-profit collaborative world, I was a founding investor in something called Charity Buzz, where we hold high-end online auctions to raise money for not-for-profits. Brings in a lot of celebrities, brings in other things, because there's no shortage of not-for-profits that need to raise money. On the carbon market, it's building an exchange, and it's now technology using data to verify. It's everything, all the models are the same. It's sort of how you apply it. And so since now I'm the old guy, like Kal, not you being the old guy, but you need the young people who really understand the technology in a collaborative way to pull it off.
I love it. Kal?
Yeah, this question resonates with me because I think collaboration is crucial. And the reason why it's crucial is because we need so much in such a little time. In this time, we need to accelerate. Bob talked about accelerating whatever effort we're doing. And I think we need to accelerate our effort to address whatever cause we're working on. So my own experience working with big NGOs, we were raising a lot of money, we're deploying a lot of capital everywhere. And over 12, 15 years, we built hospitals, we built clinics, we trained a lot of surgeons, but we're still falling behind in terms of addressing blindness. We're helping a lot of people. And the key for this new initiative that we're embarking on is to use innovation, very advanced technologies that we can monetize to get return to people, but at the same time, take that technology, deploy it ourselves, but work with the existing NGOs that have infrastructure in those places. They understand all the local nuances, they understand the local environment, and give them access to that technology immediately. So they don't have to go buy lenses from the big companies because they give them what I call leftovers. They give them all the technologies that are outdated. I think that vision or good vision is a human right, just like freedom. And giving people the right to the best technology that they can have access to, whether they have means or not, is a responsibility for all of us. And I think not having access to good vision is a tragedy, but I think it's even worse if these people don't have access to good vision because they cannot afford it. So if we don't have the technology, that's fine. We have the technology, it doesn't get to people who really need it.
I love that. I'm actually going to go off script with a question because, Peter, both you and Kal have tied on to this. And Linda, you fall into this category. We talk a lot in impact projects, ESG, investing, all the different aspects of it, and it's great. And philanthropy is phenomenal. We're all here because we believe in it. And how do you have these core values, but how are you working to instill it in the next generation as well? We haven't had a conversation about that. It popped into my mind because, Kal, you gave your quote, if you really love someone, show them how they can do it without you. We all are mortal here. We all will eventually pass on. How do we make sure that this passes on as well to the next gen? And I apologize that this was not on your guys' pre-question list, but it just came to me. Any of you?
I mean, I can start. My children are 9 and 10, so it's a little early, but the families that we work with who have invested in our fund, this is a big conversation and a big consideration of how they are passing on their legacy to the next generation. Because a lot of the next generation is sort of innovative and they want to be hands-on with investments. They want to understand diligence. They want to understand, and they have a higher risk tolerance generally. I'm kind of generalizing right now than maybe their parents, where their parents might be more concerned about capital preservation. They might just be like, oh, that's a cool project, I want to invest in that. And so having sort of parents engage with the next generation as they're thinking about investments in a different way, and bringing to light, a lot of the next gen is very passionate about certain things, bringing to light those values, but then allowing them to see that the other side of this is financial responsibility can be like a real mentorship field that we've seen play out really nicely with some of the investors that have invested in our fund. I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
That helps.
Yeah.
Peter, Kal?
So, first of all, the main thing is you have to get your children engaged, and I don't care what it is, it's something that they're passionate about. So one of the advantages of being in New York City that I always told my children, is it fair that kids who live 30 blocks away from you have to work harder to succeed than you do to fail? So if you're a rich white person, you got to really try your best to screw up. You got every resource in the world to help bring you back up. So for my kids, on the way home from school every week, they were going to volunteer at a program that Robinhood funds. My son works for the Houston Rockets, and his passion, and he was helping his assistant coach, who was working with the Sudanese ball players in the Olympics this year. By the way, they did pretty well if you follow Olympic basketball. So I don't care what it is, and then they have to keep on doing it. And then my last sort of line is, for your children who are well, if you give it away, you will make it. Kal was talking about, you were talking about the other way around. If you make it, give it away. And I'm like, the success goes hand in hand. Whatever that mentality is that you have to help give it away is going to be successful in you leading a business.
Kal?
Yeah, I mean, beautifully said. I think education has a lot to do with it, whether it's education for kids or education at a higher level. My view is that, having, again, worked with a lot of founders who I believe are building the future of this world, we were putting a course together for the founders to help them build these companies. And we got to the end of the course, and some of my colleagues were saying, I think we need to add emotional intelligence there. And I said, why? They said, it helps them deal with the employees and this and that. And I told them, I said, why don't we add something so that these amazingly intelligent people build these companies on a purpose-driven mindset. I mean, your talent, that's a talent. Being an entrepreneur and being an innovator is a talent. And that's the most valuable commodity that anyone can have, more than money, even more than intelligence, because then you have a drive, you have all these things that make these entrepreneurs so successful, creating these incredible technologies. So we talked about it, and then I came back and I said, what I would like to add is a module that says, or that we called spiritual intelligence. So it doesn't have anything to do with any kind of association with any religious belief or anything like that. But spiritual intelligence is an introduction to how being purpose-driven can make you wildly successful in whatever you're doing, but in helping others as well. And I think the idea that a lot of people have is that that's mutually exclusive. I have to be focused on making money, driving or building value for shareholders. That's mutually exclusive with being value-driven. And I think trying to teach people that those two things go hand in hand, regardless of what you believe are. And you can demonstrate that to people. If you're grounded, if you are kind to other people, to your employees, you get loyalty, you get people who would work incredibly hard to fulfill your dream. That's leadership, and that's inspired leadership. And I think for me, that's something that would help the world move into the right direction.
I love that. Okay, I've been very bad at leaving enough time for questions in the past. I have more questions to ask them, but I want to open it up to the audience. If anyone, we have some really bright minds on here. Any questions up to this point? Raise your hand if you don't. Oh, Steve.
How do you install ethics in terms of the purposes and your purposefulness into the organizations that you are funding or either or?
How do you instill ethics into the organizations that you're funding or that you're working with and make sure that they're being ethical with what you're doing?
So for me, it's a great question. So I get to do two things with this answer. One, I get to thank my colleagues at CIBC for sponsoring the reception at the end today, but also I sit on the risk committee of CIBC. And one of the main questions with regard to hiring people and dealing with the CRO, and we've seen some banks that went down, is risk culture. And it has to start at the top of the organization, and it has to be very, very important. And people have to be, in our case, that is something that we think about and we try to measure and include that in year-end compensation. And I don't think it's easy to define, but like the famous Supreme Court, you know it when you see it, and you definitely know it when you don't see it.
I love that. Any other questions before we continue? Okay, good. Okay, are there any challenges that are unique to scaling impact investments and projects as compared to traditional finance? What are they? How have you mitigated against them, overcome it?
Oh, there are a lot of challenges. I think one of the most challenging aspects is, aside from the lack of capital,
Hard one.
is how do you measure and manage impact?
Right.
I mean, this has been such a challenge for all NGOs. So if you want to demonstrate to anyone that you're actually impacting a community, how do you measure and manage that impact? The good news is that the rise of artificial intelligence is giving us a unique opportunity to tackle this challenge. And I loved Aldo's talk this morning about making artificial intelligence affordable for all. Because now we can measure, we can collect data, we can analyze data in a real time, we can look at trends, we can look at insights. More importantly, we can look at counterfactual insights. In other words, what happens to a community if you don't address a specific social issue? That was never even possible a year ago. And now we're talking to companies who can do these things. So I think I am so excited about doing what I'm doing today because the tools are there, the passion is there, and the talent is there. So I'm very hopeful that we can tackle these challenges effectively.
Yeah, so thank you for mentioning that. I was also going to add the cost of impact measurement, right, which should not be prohibitive, because if you think about those people on the ground doing the work, if you impose on them, KPIs that they have to measure for a huge cost, it's not realistic. So we think a lot about meeting people where they are with that. But that's actually related to the other challenge on the other side, which is concerns about what people call greenwashing or impact washing, which is, a belief that some people have not lived up to the promise, or they're just saying things and there isn't real world impact. In the last few years, there's been a lot of attention on this. In Europe, the government came out with regulations, the SFDR, to try to combat greenwashing. So if you say you're an impact fund, you have to show XYZ. And interestingly, when they did that, a lot of people dropped the label from their funds, right? Sustainable or impact. But this is a real concern, because in order to drive capital to this space, there has to be trust and authenticity of these real world outcomes. I actually look at it as an opportunity, because I think that now the field is going to come together and think about, really actually being not like they were lying, but like being truthful about the progress, because it is progress. You're kind of doing it and it's taking time and you're growing, and being open about the imperfections, the assumptions that are being made in the data and all of this. And then I'm going to touch on another one, which is a bit spicy, but the politicization of concepts like ESG or DEI, and then that being conflated with what impact investing is. So I think some people who are maybe interested in having an impact in the world are now like, oh, is this messy, or is this woke, or is this, whatever, right? There's a lot of attention around that. To that, I will say, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Because we still need to do a lot of good things in the world. There's still so much need, and the world's biggest problems have not gone away. I wish I had coined this, but I heard somebody say, these are not red or blue issues, they're red, white, and blue. And I think if we remember that housing, that healthcare, that education, that America still has 5 million unbanked individuals, if we remember those things, we will realize that we shouldn't let the politics stop us from continuing to deploy private capital. And I'm going to get off my soapbox, but but that's it.
So one of the advantages of being on a panel like this is you got two people that are way smarter than I am, so I don't really have to answer the question. But I would just say, in 2 words, human capital. Every organization is only as good as your human capital, and if you're dealing in whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, you have to have a career path to your best people. And the beauty of hiring those who are starting their careers or young is, I like to say, the beauty of the naivete of youth is they don't think these problems are intractable. And you need that innovative thinking.
I love it. Okay. Now I'm actually going to open it up to the audience for questions. Does anyone have any questions that they have for the panel? Man, that sun at lunch really must have done people in. Tao. You're going to have, yes. You're going to have to just yell because I don't have.
Not all investable opportunities are ready for it. And so how do you approach things that are maybe need some grant, startup help to get to a point where it's investable? And how do you manage that given, the gifts that you have, maybe an impact investment, maybe not getting an investment ready to an investable spot? Or how does that work out in the world?
So you are not a plan in the audience, and I appreciate that. So what we've started at Robinhood is something called Blue Ridge Labs, where we take young entrepreneurs who are interested in doing things along those lines. And we're a not-for-profit, so we don't take equity, but we'll seed them, we'll bring them in, and we'll mentor them. And a number of them actually go and start out and get private equity financing. All we ask is if they're successful is they give the grant back to us. And another way we address that is we have a community of over 1,000 individuals in New York who utilize a lot of benefits called the Design Insight Group. And they're surveyed and they're bought in to see if this is a good idea. And one we funded is something called Just Fix, where you deal with landlords and people are complaining about lack of heat and hot water. You put in an app, right, in their apartment that measures all this stuff. Then the data can be collected, so then it doesn't become a he said, she said, as well, the landlord says I'm doing it, but they're not. And so it's a way, again, using data and technology to really get more efficient in terms of some of these issues.
Do you think of impact investing only as do you think of impact investing only as philanthropic or also as investing in for-profit businesses who are trying to have a positive impact?
So it's actually the latter. So it's actually just commercial. If you had to think about it in a simple way, it's traditional investing that also happens to be intentional about being beneficial to society. So a lot of times for us, we invest in funds and then those funds invest into companies. So one of the things that we see with the types of funds that we invest in is very similar to the philanthropic world. They will have a theory of change. Like, this is how the money will actually lead to this societal outcome, in addition to, I am going to give you a private equity target return.
I would just add, I'm not that sophisticated of a guy, so my philosophy is more money is better than less. So Laconic is a for-profit, Charity Buzz is a for-profit.
So you can mix the two. With that, we are out of time. I know that Kal, Linda, and Peter are going to be hanging out later tonight at the reception at 5 o'clock, but wanted to thank you very much for coming up on the panel.